During your senior year in high school, Janie, in January 1950, you married. A marriage which is later dissolved. You graduate in June, and the following November, one of the happiest events of your life occurs, right, Jane?
Oh, yes. In November the 8th, I gave birth to a beautiful little daughter, Jayne Marie.
Yes. Even though you're now a mother, you continue your education where?
At the University of Texas.
What'd you do with Jayne Marie during that time when you went to classes?
I put her in a baby buggy and took her to classes with me. And it's not so hard, really.
We talked to many people who remember seeing you with little Janie Marie in the basket there. You were inseparable.
Cutting up frogs with one hand and giving her a bottle with the other.
Where else did you go to school? What other places?
At NU, I went to Southern Methodist University in Dallas and also UCLA.
Maintaining a B average, even earning a grade of A in a philosophy course in logic. That hardly sounds like a girl who's been characterized as a dumb blonde.
Well, to be an actress, you need that.
Janie Mansfield was no dumb blonde, believe me, Ralph.
The voice of a man who knows you very well since you were 8 years old, as a matter of fact. Your counselor at Southern Methodist University, where he's now head of psychological service, Dr. Harold Chapman.
Oh, it's the most wonderful thing. Oh, bless your heart. Oh, I'm so thrilled.
Jane was a fine student, eh, Dr. Chapman?
Oh. Indeed she was, Ralph. Janie was in one of my psychology classes at SMU.
I certainly was. We've been friends even before that, like you said, since
8 years of age.
Years old.
Yes. She was serious-minded, hard-working student.
But you knew of her ambition to...
Yes, as her counselor, I knew of this long, burning ambition of hers to become a movie star. She visualized herself then as she is now. And Ralph, her dream has really come true. Janie, you set a goal for yourself, honey. And you went after it, and I'm proud of you.
And you have a warm spot in your heart for Dr. Chapman, too. Southern Methodist University. Jane, you'll be seeing Dr. Chapman later at the party in your honor at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, where accommodations have been provided for your family and friends. Thank you, Dr. Chapman.
That's so wonderful, Ralph.
1953, you and your 2-year-old, Jane Marie, set forth to conquer Hollywood. You work at odd jobs, you sell candy in a movie theater. You pose for pin-up, cheesecake photos. Through your own efforts, secure a screen test at Paramount Studios. But nothing happens. Then January 1955, Howard Hughes stages a spectacular premiere of his latest picture in Silver Springs, Florida. 2 planes from New York and 2 from Hollywood, bearing photographers, reporters, stars, and starlets, fly to Florida. And you, Jane Mansfield, a complete unknown, are there.
She created the biggest explosion since the atom bomb.
Your good friend who covered that premiere, veteran Hollywood motion picture cameraman and freelance photographer, Ted Fisher.
Wonderful.
Here's Ted.
Hello, Ted. How are you?
Ted, what happened down there?
Well, I first saw Jane on the plane, and she was wearing the tightest fitting dress I ever saw on a woman.
Dear.
As it turned out, all the other cameramen were shooting still cameras. And I was lucky. I was the only photographer there that covered the event in motion picture.
Well, let's look at some of that film, and you tell us about it, Ted, over here.
Well, by the time we got to Florida, everyone on the plane knew Jane. The next day, the girls were making entrances in bathing suits. There were some stars there, but when Jane made her entrance, boom, all the photographers went to her like bees to honey. Within the next 3 days, her picture was in every paper and magazine in this country, South America, and in Europe.
Thanks to Ted.
What color was your bathing suit, Jane?
It was red.
Kind of a lame, wasn't it? A red lame?
Yes, red
You had
lame.
2 suits, I believe.
They were both red.
Well, one was a bikini, I think, that you made your second appearance in. You remember the suits, Ted?
Remember them? How could anyone ever forget them?
I tell you, I even borrowed the suits. I didn't own a bathing suit.
When we
I'd like
got
to ask from whom, because...
When we got back to Hollywood, my brother, George Fisher, on his Hollywood TV program, ran the film and interviewed you. And immediately the phone calls came in from Darryl Zanuck, 20th Century Fox, Hal Wallace, and Jack Warner. And Warner Brothers signed you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ted Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted Fisher.
Within a matter of days, The unknown little girl from Texas is a big celebrity, complete with agent, press agent, and Warner Brothers contract. You begin to live the adult version of your pink lollipop world, Jayne Mansfield. So far, no one has seen you act, but they're in for a big surprise there. Hollywood, 1955, Jayne. You're perhaps the most photographed, most publicized celebrity of the day. But you're still not a star, as you quickly learn when after 3 small parts in pictures, you ask for a release from your contract. Your agent sends you to Philadelphia to make a picture, and then to New York to read for George Axelrod and Julie Stein, who are producing the Broadway play Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter. What happens, Jayne?
I got the part.
I think, didn't Mr. Axelrod coach you how to read for Mr. Stein, Mr.
Oh, yes, it was wonderful. George Axelrod told me, he said, when you wake up tomorrow morning, that's when, after we open, he said, you look in the mirror and you'll see a star. And I kept asking myself, are you sure? Because otherwise I didn't want to wake up. And he kept telling me and telling me and telling me, and he was a very good friend of mine. And Julie Stein, he was, I owe Julie, he gave me my break.
On October 13th, 1955, the play opens at the Belasco Theater and runs for 444 performances.
Jayne was perfect in the part of Rita Marlowe, Ralph.
A woman who knew you more intimately than anyone during the run of the play. We knew you would rather see her than just anyone almost. Your wardrobe mistress, Rose Colley.
Oh, Rose, God love you. Oh, I'm so thrilled.
So high.
Oh.
It's typical of Jayne to want to be friends with everybody.
Oh, she was such a dear friend.
Well, it was your first Broadway appearance, Jayne, isn't that right, Mrs. Colley?
It was.
Yes.
And Jayne hasn't a nerve in her, Ralph. I remember the opening night when everyone was so nervously pacing back and forth. Jayne was sitting in the dressing room pasting pictures in her scrapbook.
Oh, dear.
And it was her turn to go on stage, and she said, couldn't I paste just one more?
You didn't have stage fright, Jayne?
Well, I always had all my pets with me. You see, I had a lot of animals, as Rose will tell you.
Yes. Well, she was a hard worker, Ralph, and was always rehearsing her lines, and was working very hard, but was never temperamental.
Oh,
Thank you, Rose Colley, for coming from New York to be with Jayne tonight. Thanks. Just catching the plane, going right back to work tonight.
I'm so happy.
Well, the reviews you receive are excellent, Jayne. The press exploits your natural endowment. You become Miss Negligee, Miss Tomato, Miss Lobster, Miss Direct Mail. Your ex-press agent, Jim Byron, estimates that during the run of the play, your picture appears in newspapers and magazines more than 36,000 times. You're the toast of Broadway, but you haven't reached your goal, Hollywood stardom. The publicity is working, though. 20th Century Fox wants you. The late Buddy Adler buys the play in order to bring you to Hollywood, where you begin a 7-year contract at a 4-figure salary. A far cry from the unknown but determined little girl who came to Hollywood only 3 years before. You immediately go into the picture The Girl Can't Help It with Tom Ewell and Edmund O'Brien. You're on target now and traveling at a terrific tempo, Jayne.